Even though I'm a philosophy professor, I oftentimes really enjoy reading pop philosophy and pop psychology books. I think it's like kind of a fun way to synthesize some knowledge and also relate it to the present day. So I want to share a few thoughts about one such book that I recently read, Selfie, How We Became So Self-Obsessed and What It's Doing to Us by Will Storr. This book starts out by talking about ancient Greece and how the model of individualism developed in ancient Greek democracy paves the way for our contemporary conceptions of the self. He also talks about medieval Christianity and the conception of the self that develops there, and some other historical periods. That happens in the first part of the book, and I will tell you that was my least favorite part of the book. Will Storr openly says he is not a philosopher, not trained in philosophy. The account that he gives of ancient Greek and medieval Christian conceptions of selfhood is extraordinarily redundant and oversimplified. Would not really recommend. There's a lot more material that you can read that's a little bit more careful there. However, once he gets into the more modern stuff, and especially some like really interesting stories about 1960s and 1970s, like the psychiatric movements or self-actualization movements that were really popular in California at the time. This book is fascinating. So I actually did really enjoy it for that, but I had to sort of slog through the first part when I had some questions about the oversimplifications that he was involved in. Quick note about writing style. This book is written in, I don't know if it's a pretentious fashion, or maybe it's like a little bit of a self-serious fashion. He opens it by talking about some really, really intense things related to suicide without giving a content warning. So if you are somebody who needs content warnings around suicide, I would either avoid this book altogether or maybe have somebody tell you like when that topic is going to come up, because it comes up very abruptly and very intensely, both in the beginning and in other places of the book. Also, weirdly, there aren't chapters in this book. There's only books, book 1, book 2, book 3. I personally love a chapter. I don't understand why you would have books without chapters like falling under them. So it's a little pet peeve with this book, but it was a super quick read. I read it in just a few days. Granted, I am a philosophy professor, but I found it to be a pretty easy read. And it educated me a lot about some of the more recent developments, let's say in the past 50, 60 years, related to the self-actualization movement and like the rise of narcissism.